Hello and welcome to the Anyone Can Play Guitar podcast,
which gives you, the listener, a series of hints and pointers on your journey as a musical artist.
providing you with interviews from those in the music industry, along with our own experiences.
Ben and James shine some light on the many pitfalls and opportunities that being a musician has to offer.
Last week we spoke to musician, author, former label owner and now music lecturer Pete Dale, where we covered the benefits of self-releasing music, the importance of physical song releases, choosing acts which go on a label, and label identity. This week we stay in Manchester with Pete, where we move on to discuss vinyl, the costs of releasing a single, and the time involved in running a label.
Welcome to episode 15 with me, Ben, and him,
James.
So, welcome back, part 2.
Yeah, still in Manchester.
Manchester, yeah.
Well, Pete was.
People, yeah. Still talking about record labels. This one's we get a bit more of the detail, this one, don't we?
Gets a bit more specific in the nuts and bolts of it.
Nuts and bolts. Excellent. But you're right, yeah. And again, something like what we spoke about last week, the bits and bobs about doing a lot of it yourself and getting other people you know to do bits for you.
Not sure I'm happy with you saying last week was bits and bobs, so this would be nuts and bolts.
Well,
what's the difference between a bit and a bob and a nut and a bolt?
I don't know. I think that they're essentially the same thing.
No, they can't be the same thing.
Why not?
Well,
you tell me.
One's a bit and a bob. God, you wouldn't have nuts and bolts if there were bits and bobs.
Well, they're just bits and bobs for making things, aren't they? That is a loose affiliation. Yeah. I think we've wandered off topic here.
Yeah. Perhaps.
So, go on.
No, please.
Didn't have anything.
I know you didn't. Oh, right. Well, I think in summary,
yeah, we get a bit more into it, don't we?
We do, and we've introduced it. We've introduced it probably enough last week, and already had enough ridiculous spiel there. So I think let's just get straight into part 2 with Pete.
Yeah, bobs and bolts.
Next thing a lot of people will be thinking was around what does it take to set this up? So, what are the costs? What does it look like? Are there upfront costs, ongoing costs? What are the key people that you have to deal with in terms of setting it up? What skills do you have to learn that you might not have had previously? What does it take to do this?
Well, the financial figures back in the 90s were different, of course, from what they are now. And when I stopped the label in 2000, my band ended up being offered to record. So I'm in this band called Milky Wimpshake that's been going for 20 odd years. And for the last 17 years, we were on a label called Fortuna Pop, which was based in London and which put out 5 albums by my band. But since that label actually closed this year, and I have recently been looking into the costs. So I've got some kind of idea of costs of doing a single and an album on vinyl today, which are quite frighteningly large. But yeah, it's getting capital together in the first place. That is the hard part. Enough capital to make the records, but also having some money left over to promote the records. So for vinyl pressing, the first thing you pay for, most pressing plants they'll just give you a total figure, like an overall figure that's a kind of all-in package. But I can break it down to the first thing you pay for actually, because you could get a record cut in one place, manufactured in a different place, maybe get the sleeves printed somewhere else. You could do it all from different, whereas the easy way to do it is to just get it all from one agent. The first thing you pay for is the cut, and that's where they literally cut into soft lacquer on a disc that looks like a record, but it can only be. It's only used then for being a master, which you then make. Well, the lacquer, then you then make a metal master from that. Once you've got the metal imprint master, you then print all the plastic singles from that metalwork.
Right.
And the metalwork expense is several £100. I think you're probably looking at least £150 per side for a single, plus VAT. So you're probably talking about £350 just for the cutting to make the metalwork. So say if you're only pressing 200, you're then going to have a unit price, and the more you press, the cheaper it becomes.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know the unit prices offhand, but I think it's fair to say that with a unit price of only pressing 100 units from the metalwork, then you're probably going to be looking at, I think, maybe 80 or 90p per unit. So once you add the VAT on, you're probably looking at maybe as much as 500 quid to make 100 records. But if you press 200 records, the unit price will come down a little bit, plus you've spread the original cutting cost across 200 units, and if you can sell 500, the unit price comes further down, and again the metalwork original mastering cost is spread further out. So the more you press, the better the profit margin becomes. So in the days when we were pressing and selling out 1,000 records, we were making a few £100 on a single, and maybe a couple of £1,000 if we could sell 1,000 vinyls. Now it's very hard to sell 1,000 CDs or 1,000 vinyl albums, and that's where it becomes hard. So I think you've also then got the costs of the artwork, so you have, on a vinyl record you have the label, the physical label, the circular paper disc in the middle of the record, yeah?
Yeah.
Which, those would always be, in the old days, if you go to a charity shop and you look at some EMI record or Decca from the 50s or 60s or 70s, you'll see that they have the same, always the same design, and that's why they were known as labels, because, the physical label would be the same for all the records on a record label.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you have one colour for the label and one colour for the sleeve, it makes it cheaper than if you have a full colour label and a full colour sleeve. These days, though, most people just go for full colour records, but it adds on extra costs. And, I recently was involved in pressing 250 copies of a 7-inch for my band. The label which put it out was actually a label called Tough Enough, based in Brighton. But because we wanted to put the single out, we agreed to go halves with them on the costs, and that they would take half of the pressing, 105 records, and that they would sell that through record shops and through their own online distribution, and that we would take the other 125 and we would sell those at our gigs and stuff.
Right, okay.
Of those, I've still got about 50 copies left, but that's okay. But the total cost for 250 records came to, I think, £480. That was once we'd spent maybe £100 on the recording costs, as well as having a colour sleeve and printed labels and stuff. Now, there are ways of working around that kind of stuff. When I ran my own record label, we would sometimes just get them with white labels, nothing printed on them, and then we would make a rubber stamp and get an ink pad and just print the rubber stamp onto the white label, and it would give it a kind of handmade feel that people liked. So there are, and then also sometimes we would hand spray paint the sleeves using a stencil, and again, people actually really liked that kind of handmade feel. So that can be another way. But yeah, if it costs 480 quid, nearly 500 quid to make 250 records, then obviously your costs are, and in fact I'm thinking that's wrong now. I think we actually paid 480 for our 125 records. So I think our unit cost came out at actually about 3-4 quid. So we have to sell the singles for a fiver at gigs, and even then we're only making £1.50 back on each record. It's, you can see from those kind of figures that it's not a pot of gold when it's small sales figures.
Yeah, I guess at that point it's not so much a making money thing, it's a more getting the music out to people thing, and just...
It is, but I think, given the internet, for a lot of bands, it may not be worth it today.
Yeah.
In the old days, the reason you could sell them was because otherwise people weren't going to be able to hear the music. Nowadays, a lot of people just won't bother buying a physical product, and so I think you've really got to be quite choosy about putting music onto a record now.
Well, I think that was going to be my next question. So we've touched on the fact that it can still bring some credibility to industry people that you have this physical product, whether it shows a level of seriousness about the band or some backing or whatever it might be. Are there any other examples of why it could be beneficial to have a physical copy today?
Well, there's the fact that, it's... No matter what happens with kind of file formats and things like that, it will always. It's likely that turntables will still be in use for many, many decades yet to come.
Yeah, true.
All the signs are that that's going to remain a popular way of listening to music. But if you don't have a physical record, then your chances of just being completely forgotten are much higher. It's possible that you will have something that will catch on and you'll make money, although making money out of physical records now is much harder, but it's possible. But I would say those are the main reasons, really. Impact, getting attention from the industry and maybe from the general public, longevity, and feasibly making a bit of money, but don't hold your breath because it's a struggle even to break even the way it is now.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay. Any other things about your experiences with record labels or running your own record label that you think might be useful to our listeners?
I think I would say that it shouldn't be entered into lightly. I did it for 8 years, and it really took over my life. We would put out at least 2 albums every year. It might be a compilation album or of different bands on the label, or a album that was just by an album by a band. But 2 or maybe 3 in a year, and maybe 4 or 5 singles, and that was because we were putting out regular releases. It helped to sell the older releases, because if you do have multiple releases, then it helps people to sort of look back at your back catalogue and think, oh yeah, I'll get one of those, because it's a question of really tapping into the collector mentality partly, but because of that, by the end I felt a pressure to keep on releasing records. We also used to we used to do trades with labels across Europe and in North America, where we might give them 20 copies of one of our records on our label, and they would give us 20 copies of something on their label, and then I would sell those 20 copies through a distribution list that I used to do. So my bedroom became like a kind of mail order record shop, if you like. And I used to have a PO box, and I would get 20 or 30 letters every week of people just ordering records through the post. So it really took over my life. And when I closed the label, it took quite a long time to wind things down, because people were still ordering stuff. I had to account to bands, that's one of the things we haven't talked about, but really you should pay. If a record gets into profit, then the band are entitled to royalties. There's things called mechanical royalties, which you're supposed to pay at the point that you get the record manufactured. All kinds of complexities around that sort of stuff, and it can be a major headache. So you've really got to feel that it's a labour of love. So I would say, don't enter into it lightly, thinking, oh yeah, I'll just do this one record and it'll just be a kind of a hobby. If you just put out one record, the chances are that it's probably not going to lead anywhere.
I guess there's a level of responsibility there as well. You know, if you're going to be putting out records of another band or artist, then I don't know. I'd feel fairly responsible, around the success of that record as well. You know, in terms of you're saying it taking over your life. I could well imagine that. You know, you'd want to be doing as much as you can to make sure that that's a success. And I guess as well as if you're trying to do your own thing, I could see how that could easily eat up a whole host of time.
Oh, absolutely. And there's no. The way I talked about it, sorry, the dog is hassling me. I'll just get rid of him. It seems like I've talked mostly about manufacturing, but that's just the first stage. Once you've got the records, you need to try and get people to buy them. So what we would do is organise gigs for the bands on the label, not only across Britain but also in Europe. My own band would sometimes go and tour in the States. 3 times we went over there. I didn't manage to get any of the other bands out to the States, but I could get the records sold over there. I would send copies out to DJs. I might ring them up or fax them, as it was then afterwards. Of course, emails are more convenient nowadays, but you have to get the records out there to journalists, to the radio, and if you don't do those things, the record's not going to sell. So it does. It takes up a lot of time, and because it's harder to get remuneration, get the money back now. Then it's difficult. One way I think, if I was doing it now, that I would look at would be getting a slice of publishing, to get an agreement with bands where I would not only put the record out, but also would make an agreement for a percentage of publishing. Because actually, publishing is one of the areas that you can make money nowadays. But that's a kind of complicated area that we probably haven't got time to go into right now.
Yeah, no, that's all good. I think I could see a lot of benefits still, though. Even if you were sort of doing tours as your own band with the other bands that were on the same label as yourself, that sort of the side benefits potentially of having to do these things anyway. So you're just doing them once, but you're doing them on behalf of multiple bands potentially. But again, that's not always necessarily going to work that easily. So I can see so many benefits, but so many potential sort of just drains on time.
I mean, that's a good diagnosis, because we went out with my band and played gigs in different towns around the UK, and I would then get the contact of that person. If I then had a record coming out by another band, I could contact the same promoter in whichever town and say, would you be up for putting a gig on? Which quite often they were. It meant if I had a band that was a bit more established, it could help me to send out the more established band with a less established band and that kind of stuff. But and the kind of live music is one of the ways that money can be made. So probably the person who wants to run a record label today needs to get a finger not only in the publishing pie, but also in the live music promotion, be it booking tours or promoting gigs. You've really kind of got to have what they call the 360-degree deal nowadays to make it workable.
Yeah, and things like merchandising as well at live shows. I know a lot of bands can make a decent chunk of their income from things like that.
Yeah, that's right.
So okay, I'm conscious of time, Pete. So what I'd very quickly like to just touch on is you sort of lecturing now on music. For any listeners that we have who might think of sort of formally studying music, why might someone want to go down that path?
Well, that's my day job, isn't it, really, now, lecturing in a university, and there's a lot of good reasons to go to university in general, as well as a lot of good reasons not to. The obvious reason not to is the expense, the debt that you get yourself into.
Yeah.
The advantage of doing it is, well, a number of things. It can widen your horizons intellectually, socially, and practically, actually, and particularly for a course like a music course, you can develop practical skills, you can develop knowledge of music and maybe of the industry, and I think it's degrees like the one I teach on didn't exist in the 80s when I went away to university. So I think that it's really good now that we have quite a wide type of coverage in the kinds of music that you can study. So I think it's a good thing to do.
Good stuff. So, well, just to finish off, we like to mention a charity or a good cause at the end of every episode, just to help get the word out. So I know there was one that you particularly keen on. If you want to give it a quick piece on who they are and what they do.
Yeah, well, the one I mentioned in the email to you earlier was Care UK, just spelt Care like CARE, which is charity refugee aid, and my wife and I do help to locally here in Cheshire, where we live. We collect clothes and things that could be of use to refugees, and then they have a collection point not so far from here for Care UK, where they then put everything in big vans and take them out to places where refugees are desperate for clothing and the basic necessities of life. Yeah, it's something that I am very much in favour of, so very happy to give a plug to them. I know they have this set up in the northwest, but I think there'll be different points across the UK where you can do something good for the refugees who are in this desperate condition.
Yeah, no, undoubtedly. I think it's a great shout, and we'll put links in the show notes for this episode for that. And like you said, I'm sure there will be points up and down the UK and potentially across the world where other listeners will be tuning in from. So, thank you very much for that, Pete. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and thanks again for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot.
So we're back, James. Second part of the second part with Pete. Lots of good bits in there again.
Good bits.
Following on a bit more from last week and getting a bit into the more detail of things. Anything jumps to mind straight away? Yes.
So I think one of the main overriding parts for me was when Pete was talking about don't go into this lightly. So if you,
yeah,
which I think was the bit that stuck in my brain most, because here's me thinking, oh yeah, this is amazing, I'd love to do that, I'd love to have loads of bands on
ACPG records,
all the rest of it. Exactly. But it's not something that you should take on lightly. I mean, first and foremost, this is people's careers that you're talking about. If you completely mess things up, then that could have been their one shot, their one moment where they were really ready to kick on, and you just completely ballsed it all up. And so the amount of work that clearly needs to go into doing such a thing,
it's a commitment, yeah,
massive, yeah. So there's a massive part of me that thinks, yeah, that's something I'd love to do, but it's not something I think you would necessarily be able to do if you had all these other things going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, loads of great advice and a lot of things to think about. But if you were to think, right, I'm going to set up my own label, whether it's to just get other bands, act solo artists onto a label, or whether it's to help with your own music, I think it's, yeah, give it a lot of thought.
Definitely, yeah, and like this is the business part of it, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's the business part. It's the bit which is not as glamorous as playing on stage in front of however many people. It's not as glamorous as being in a recording studio and nailing it, whatever. But it is the bit that pays the bills. And it's the bit that gets you the recording studio booked, and it's the bit that gets you the gig at the festival, and it gets you the bit that gets you on TV. It's also the bit that gets you music played where you want it played. But one of the key things I wanted to mention was about the vinyl and the again, we spoke about last time about the physical part of it.
And it bringing credibility. But
Yeah.
he sort of did a good job of just going through, I mean, vinyl just being one of the many physical mediums you could put your music onto, but just to go through all the different component parts that it takes, going from having your music recorded to actually getting it onto a vinyl, and there's a lot of bits.
There's definitely a lot of bits. It trims the profit every time, and thing is, it's...
Well, he said you're probably not going to make a profit unless you sell loads.
Exactly.
Which, let's be honest, you're probably not going to sell loads of physical copies.
Maybe not, but the thing about it was, like, it's a product. It can look cool. It might be good at the start. Like, if you're this band who kind of got a bit of a rep, if you press a 500 CD or vinyl thing, it becomes its own legendary status. There's a few bands out there who've got these first single deals, which you can't, like Block Party had one.
Right.
Like they become like bits of myth sort of thing.
Some like collector item type thing. So if you... Because again, Pete was talking about a lot of bands and artists he speaks to might sell 300, 400, 500 copies if they do a single today, whether that's downloads or whether that's physical, copies. So I guess if you were at the point of selling a good few hundred, or maybe it's a couple of thousand, and you were like, well, I'll have 100 vinyls, and they'll all have a nice sort of stamp on them that 01, 02, 03. I could see that being a good thing, because like you say, you're not going to make a profit on them. Well, you might make a tiny bit, but then you've got those things that people would look out for. Your hardcore fans would really want to get a hold of. I could see that being a thing.
But on the flip side, though, is that could also mean that you could have recorded another 10 songs, and then those 10 songs could be the hit that just puts you over the top. That could all go on Spotify or all go on iTunes or whatever. So it's a fine balance. I think, like when we were growing up, I don't know if I can't say it was easier or harder because I wasn't there, but I bet you it was easier. There was a certain formula to it. Like, you got a deal, you released CDs, you released 3 singles and an album, tour it. 3 singles and an album, tour it. Now there's so many different options. Like,
but there's
what
more
is the best
scope for creativity now.
I think, totally, yeah. I mean, what is the best option? It's just thinking, do I create and put it out there because someone will pick it up, build an audience? Because how much do you really make from physically selling music these days? By the time people take cuts and streaming, I think that's 3,500 or 4,500 plays equals 1 sale on like streams. So if you get, let's just say 4,500 people listen to your single, it's equivalent of 79 pence.
Well, I think what we're going to have to do at some point in the near future is get someone on. So rather than, we think we should get someone on to go through the actual specifics of how you monetize your art online through views rather than sales, and what that looks like compared to the physical product, because there are so many options. So but it was interesting going through the detail of the more traditional angle before we then in future episodes get onto that. But...
and the thing about having a deal though as well, like, someone will do all that work and then promote it. It's about the promotion, really. It's getting that audience bigger, so you play bigger festivals and bigger gigs and sell more tickets and have more TV spots. Because unless you're Adele or Ed Sheeran selling 20 million albums, you're not going to make a great deal from that part of it. But if you sell 100,000 tickets on a tour, that's a lot of 100,000s. You know what I mean? So my point is, I think the vinyl, the physical thing is cool to like get a momentum going. Like they're having this thing, this like myth about the...
Well, I guess if someone goes onto your website and there's a shop section or where they can buy vinyl, CDs, or any number of other products, that whether it's tea towels that Mark Morris was selling or whatever, it does create a sort of a bit of professionalism. So if I was a journalist who was sort of think, right, I might want to write about any number of people. I go on the website and they've got a fair bit of merch, they've got vinyls and CDs as well as they must be fairly established, or they must be fairly professional. Or it just gives a very different image, I think, over to whoever has happened to search you out, as opposed to just here's one thing that you can download.
Yeah,
just a bit different.
Yeah, and all that is quite. It comes to our next point, which is actually getting friends and whoever to do things for you and help you out. And artwork's a big thing, because I still stand by that. A good piece of artwork goes a long way. And obviously we've got Mark, who's done the artwork for our podcast. So thank you, Mark. I'm sure he's mentioned a few times. He never thanked me on the podcast. But he also did a lot of artwork for us as the band, as did Simon. I've got to get me weekly mention of Simon, because he complained the other day when I hadn't mentioned him. So there you go, Simon. And also Kev did a lot of work on the artwork. And I think if you're at a gig and people are handing out CDs or handing out flyers, because they might not have CDs, you get one and it's just got lists on, or you get one that's got a bit of work on it and it just looks that bit better. You're probably going to read that one, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. It is. As humans, we often get drawn to the shiny thing or the thing that looks pretty or whatever. That's just a fact. I'm also big on this. I think when we were starting the podcast and we were looking to get various people involved, the fact that we had a website or something that people could go to that looked good. If we had have drawn or created the logos and branding and things ourselves, you can guarantee it would have been fairly awful.
Compared to a professional graphic designer, then yes, it would have been.
But it makes a massive... But then it looks completely awful, so when people go to it, they would have been, not sure, I'm gonna suggest to Mark Radcliffe that he wants to go on and do that show, because, so I totally agree.
Yeah, because we did see that, didn't we, at the start, when we were emailing people out, we would see individual hits on the website, wouldn't we?
We would.
It would make sense, and that's when we would get replies from people, because they've probably visited, noticed what we're about. It's not just a hand-drawn thing or whatever. But
no, it's a fact. So you're right. For every however many emails were sent out to people, you would notice that off the back of it, they would click the link and have a look. And if in that moment what they went to just didn't look professional, interesting, good, whatever, then yeah. So I think artwork is extremely important.
Yeah, and I think that works as well with, just segueing right back here, James, with, like we spoke about this last time, about companies' artwork and what their vision of the artwork you have for you. If they don't have very good company branding or what have you, and it just looks like it's just been thrown together, do you want to sign with them? Yeah. If you can pay for it, great. If you can get someone to do it for free, even better. If you can do it yourself, even better, because you've got more control. Because these graphic designers, they still like to put their own slant on it, which is fine if you trust them, because we've always been lucky with that respect. But people will want it because it's their work as well. Because if their work goes on your album and it's seen, they go, well, that's rubbish. Who did that? This company.
Yeah.
Don't like that. But I told you to do that. Then they get less business. So you've got to, especially if you get it for cheap or for free, you've got to
give and take.
Yeah, you've got to think about the other artist, because that's what they're in for.
So something I found interesting, which I didn't really know was a thing, but then I'd not really thought about it, was when Pete saying he went halves with a record label on the costs of releasing a single. That was interesting, because again, it's not the cheapest game in town if you want to release something at least that has a physical element to it, or paying for whatever advertising, publicity, or whatever it might be. So the whole notion of going halves was that.
Yeah, I mean, this might have been in the movie. I don't know how much it was in real life, but 24 Hour Party people had a similar thing, didn't they, with their factory? Like, everything was owned 50-50 between the company and the artist. So I think that's a rarity more than a...
But I think that was more of the
music itself.
More the profit almost, or the royalties that came off the back of it, as opposed to stumping up the cash up front. I don't think Ian Curtis and the like had £2 coins to rub together necessarily. So there's a bit of difference on that. But again, a lot of bands won't have, so it's probably not an option for a lot of people. But if you have managed to scratch a bit of money together from gigging
or get a 50-50 deal, you've done well.
Well, but I mean, it might be a thing to approach labels and say, look,
we've established our brand, we've established our music, this is our fan base.
Yeah, this is what we can bring to the table. Can you meet us halfway? And because to be fair, if I was a label and I was looking for, it's a gamble with any new act that I guess you put on your label. You don't know how it's going to go. If I've got someone who comes to the table who've got a good backstory, they've got a bit of localized, media attention, all the other things that they've built up, and then they come to me saying, well, we the band are willing to take half the risk, will you take the other half with us? That's surely a far better proposition for the label, rather than taking on the whole risk. So
definitely. So it's a ready-made product, isn't it?
Yeah. Interesting approach.
Yeah, there's a lot of different approaches. So I would say if anyone was listening to this going, I've had this approach by this label, is look at that label. What can they do for you? What can you do for them? And try not to get yourself screwed over, basically. Yeah. Not that I'm saying all labels do that, but...
Well, no, but it's got to be a partnership, hasn't it?
Definitely, because, yes, labels are brilliant at promoting and getting you on TV and getting you in festivals, but if they're just promoting absolute rubbish, they're going to soon get found out. And if you've got an absolute brilliant product, and I know this, again, it sounds like businessy product and all that, but essentially that's what it is. Your album is your product, your voice is your product, or whatever. It's definitely a better bargaining chip, if you will. And one of the things mentioned on the last episode, but I kind of took it for this one, was getting the right bands on labels and having that whole community. So we mentioned last time about, I don't like that band, and we're on the same label, we might end up touring with them. But I've mentioned this label before, but the label Discord Records in America, they had very similar artists from a very similar area, all on the same label, and they all work together. It's like putting, I think it probably would have been vinyl at the time, into the sleeves for other bands on the label, doing it for other bands, and it was a whole community. Similar type of music though, so you had stuff like Fugazi and Minor Threat, who were very similar sounding bands. So if you went to a Discord night to see Fugazi and Minor Threat were playing, they're not the same, but they're similar, and there's a fair chance you're going to like them both, which, if you listen to them both, you probably would like them both. So that's again a key thing. If you're in a label and in a band and label approaches you and you go, well, that's 9 bands who are nothing like us. They're not going to help us sell our records.
Yes, that's not going to work for you.
But I could take 50% cut, but have more artistic, whatever. But I'm on the same label as the Monkeys, Arctic Monkeys. I think I'll do that. You know what I mean? It might fit you better. So definitely do your homework. And I know it's hard to say that. It's easy for me to say that, but hard to go when someone comes to you. You've been in a band for 3 years, and someone comes with a deal of like, we'll give you a decent amount of pay, decent royalties.
Well, I guess it would be hard to say no if
3 albums,
whatever the offer was.
Yeah.
If you've been doing it for a while and nothing's been happening or nothing's came around, and
it's a hard one. But it's like anything. It's a little bit of work. It's not so much work. It's just a little bit of thought and a little bit of planning, a little bit of. You've got to remember, you don't have to say yes right that second.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't get much more than 1 second to say yes. But you definitely got time to think it through. Do your research. Do you want to be on that label? What kind of deal again? And remember, you've also got to get the lawyers involved as well, because they have to take a cut and make sure everything's. You're not going to be doing adverts for like random far right things or something like that. But it's a legitimate point. You could be ending up doing stuff you didn't want to do, or get involved in stuff that you had no interest in. But yeah, I would say both these episodes are together. I mean, they're probably a bit shorter than other ones we've done, but there's lots of bits on there which were interesting to hear someone on the other side talk about. We did a lot of it ourselves, but it's just that extra bit to tip you over the edge. How?
Well, yeah. My experience in general was we could do a hell of a lot ourselves, but ultimately we couldn't do everything.
Yeah.
And even the bits that we did, there's always a lot of it that could have been done a hell of a lot better.
Exactly.
So we'll finish off a couple of things.
Yeah.
One, I want to, as a thank you to Pete, give a quick plug for his book.
Yes, you can see him on the website holding it up.
Yes.
Just to prove it exists.
Exactly. So anyone can do it. Empowerment, Tradition and the Punk Underground. So again, that was one of the things that I liked about Pete in general. He's got that DIY ethos. So whether it's I'm going to start a band, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to start a label, he's just someone who just gets out and does it.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, that's what I always loved about the whole thing. So we shall put links in the show notes for anyone who might want to pick up a copy of Pete's book. I mean, he's been and done and seen so many different parts of the music industry. I'm confident it'll be a good read.
Definitely. And what was his charity this time?
Care UK charity. So largely centred around refugee aid.
Which is very prominent these days as well.
Yes, there's a hell of a lot of refugees in the world in general at the minute.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just, if you look at the likes of Freddie Mercury, who landed on our shores, you know, there's so many. Just if you look at the music industry that may not have been, had they not have, you know, been able to move to another country and start new lives almost. So again, fair play to the people behind that, and we will put links in the show notes to that also.
Yeah, and then actually on the back of that, Adam Buxton's podcast, who I mentioned before, episode 57, is with Hassan Akkad, who is a refugee from Syria. That is one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to. It is,
as a statement,
outrageous. He talks about it as such a matter of fact, and then you realise what he's saying, and you're like you can tell in Adam Buxton's voice of like, you're talking about people's lives here as it's a story, because it is a story, because he lived it. But it's if anyone who has like these whatever these thoughts about refugees, it's definitely worth 45 minutes of your time just to like hear the other side of it.
Well, again, we'll stick a link in the show notes to that as well.
So this is episode 15 now.
Yes, it is.
So we're quite a few episodes in now, so we'll love
15.
Yeah.
Some would say.
Just over 3 months. So it'll be good to hear from people, see what they think.
We've already had some things coming in from
bits and bobs.
Various some bits and bobs have been coming in from listeners, and it's been really good to hear from people. One, just to hear what they're getting out of the show, which all of the good things that people think, oh well, you know what, that was really useful, this was really useful. You know, any suggestions on the types of things that you'd like us to cover in future shows? It's been really helpful to get feedback from those of you who are listening. So, you know, please get in touch. The more the merrier. So
definitely,
you know, our email address info@acpgmusic.com. Good place to get us. But
and we will get back in touch no matter what.
Yes, we will. We'll not commit to timescales because we're getting more and more coming in. But we will definitely get back to you, or on any of the social media platforms.
But yeah, please do get in touch. We'll love to hear from what you think. Would you prefer more of this type of interview, that type of interview? Could you get this sort of person on? Because we haven't got much information about these sort of things.
Well, I think one of the things coming through, we do need to get, we've covered a lot of the more traditional parts of the music industry. We definitely need to get more people on who have been using. So we've covered some of the bits of how to build your story, how to have some good content ready for when people come to access you. But well, how do you get the most out of the social media tools? What's the tactics that you would sort of play out, or for acts that are just sort of have recently made it big now, as opposed to some of the great names that we've had on who perhaps made it when the music industry was far different. So there's a lot of things like that which make perfect sense from in the sort of things that people have been asking for. So we shall endeavour to
definitely
get more people on to cover those things.
Yeah.
We've not checked in on the donut for a while, Ben.
Let's do it. I heard a good line on a song, actually, James. You know, people say half full or half empty glasses. The line was, I see the donut, you see the hole. Such a good line.
Well, the first thing to note, Ben, it's not a donut anymore.
Is it not?
Do you see a donut?
I don't actually. No, I don't. No.
Well, no, because the hosting company that we use has changed its platform, and donuts. Well, maybe you can still get a donut. To be fair, I've not really explored it very much, but this is definitely more line graph.
Yeah.
But certainly last week was a bumper week.
The individual days seem to be going up.
Yes,
well.
Which is good.
Yeah.
As listener base increases, and our favourite game of all, which is Guess the Country, has been in full flow. I can't remember the last time we checked in, but there is now 24 different countries that we've got listeners from. So thank you to you all. I mean,
yes.
some that we expected, you know.
Yeah.
Our own country, United States.
Canada, because we've got family out there.
Yeah.
Qatar, because of Robert.
Yeah, other English-speaking countries, such as Australia, in there. But there's been a few curveballs, it would be fair to say.
Well, that to me, there, James, the second from bottom, might be the biggest, the most curviest of all the curveballs.
Well, I don't know if Guatemala is the biggest surprise in terms of countries, because I'll be honest, hello to our friend in Ethiopia.
Oh, two friends in Ethiopia. We might be the same one downloading two episodes.
Could well be the same one.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know what? It's great to see that there's people all over pretty much all over the world.
Yeah.
Listening to the show, which is absolutely fantastic.
It is. If you had said to me when we first started this, or when I was interviewing Paul Smith all those moons ago, you're going to have a listener in Ethiopia, or maybe it's two, I'd be like, yeah. Really?
Well,
brilliant.
Exactly. It is absolutely brilliant. Thank you to you all. Please keep on getting in touch.
50 episodes in.
So we can keep improving the show, get new guests on, various topics that you might want us to cover, and we shall continue.
We shall continue.
Yeah.
We continue.
Coming up next week, we shift from Manchester to Liverpool to speak with singer-songwriter, Mercury Prize nominee and adopted Geordie Catherine Williams. With Kath, we discuss songwriting for yourself versus others, songwriting classes, and stage fright.
We've reached the end of this week's episode of Anyone Can Play Guitar podcast.
Big thank you for tuning in, and remember to stop by iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from and subscribe so that you never miss an episode.
While you're there, it would be amazing if you could leave a rating and a review.
All the show notes can be found at www.acpgmusic.com, and if you want to get in touch,
email us your questions, any feedback and any suggestions to info@acpgmusic.com.
That's it for now. Keep supporting upcoming artists,
and we'll catch you next time.